let's talk damage. Every single Warframe has an ability that can do damage, all of them. Some are more consistent than others, but everyone's got something. So the question is then, who's the very best at dealing damage? Given how many different factors apply, like the different types of damage abilities, different frames are good for different circumstances. So I suppose the real question is, which frames are the best overall for enhancing your damage regardless of the situation? So this video is going to be on exactly that. I'm the Engineer, and let's solve a practical problem. I do just want to quickly remind you to pop those like and subscribe buttons if you find the video helpful, or if you hate it, you can dislike it instead, if you really must. In either case, just let me know in the comments what you liked or disliked. I read every single comment. So then, the DPS frames I'm going to be touching on are Chroma, Mesa, Mirage, Octavia, Revenant, Saryn, Titania, Volt, Wisp and Wukong. A bunch. Each of these frames has a strength in the damage dealing department that is worth having in your arsenal to cover all bases. I'm skipping out two frames here, Ember and Equinox, as their damage dealing capabilities I've already covered in nuke frames. So, let's dive in. Chroma carries a very basic ability called Vex Armor, his third ability. It's a passive aura which is refreshable mid-duration to maintain the effect. The aura provides Chroma and nearby allies an armor buff and a weapon damage buff. The damage buff specifically increases when Chroma takes damage on his health, up to a hefty max, and it stays there until the ability timer runs out. This means Chroma can take a bunch of health damage to charge the aura, and then just keep it active for the entire rest of the mission. At base, this is a 275% damage buff, out to 18 meters, and it stacks like a pure damage mod on weapons, like Saryn does on rifles. Ability strength increases this buff further, which can get to ludicrous levels such as in arbitrations. This damage buff is a great team support, especially with the associated armor buff, which can drastically improve the damage output of your squad. Chroma is unlocked from the quest The New Strange, although his components require completion of the Pluto Junction, as well as obtaining other frames parts such as on Sedna. Frankly, the Prime variant is much easier to obtain. Mesa is a pretty iconic damage dealer. Her second ability, Shooting Gallery, adds 25% to her and her allies' weapon damage for the duration. Though far more important is her fourth ability, Peacemaker. Mesa becomes an immobile powerhouse of aimbot level devastation, opening up a torrent of bullets onto every enemy within the aiming reticle. Pretty much point, hold your fire button, and melt any opposition. Peacemaker mods and ability strength both enhance the damage this can do, and the damage and fire rate ramps up the longer you're firing for, reaching up to some Gatling gun levels. Mesa knows, when it comes to dealing with Endless Grenier, use a gun, and if that don't work, use more gun. Mesa can be obtained from the Mutalist Alad V assassination on Eris, or again, the Prime version is much easier to obtain. Mirage is capable of enhancing her own damage output in a few ways. Firstly is her simple Hall of Mirrors ability, allowing her to have doppelgangers mirror her actions and add their own damage, coming up to an 80% base damage buff. As this is a duplication, this damage buff is applied to your final damage total, rather than like a damage mod, meaning it is even more impactful than it first seems. With the augment, this damage can scale yet higher. Following on, Mirage's third ability, Eclipse, allows her to take this damage even further. While in light, as opposed to darkness, Mirage gains a 200% weapon damage bonus, which is also applied after all normal weapon damage calculations. This means that combined with Hall of Mirrors, Mirage innately can increase her damage nearly 4 times over, before any ability strength improvements are considered. This buff doesn't apply to her copies though. The augment for this ability allows allies within 15 meters to get the same benefit, similar to how Chroma works. And, to top it all off, Mirage's second ability, Sleight of Hand, an unseeming trap-laying ability, can balloon in damage output using the explosive legerdemain augment. With this augment equipped, Mirage can turn all nearby pickups, such as ammo, into extra mines, only affecting her pickups though, not her allies' use of them. While it's not the most damaging, this can still cause some serious hurt in close quarters, especially in places like Sanctuary Onslaught. Mirage is pretty easily obtained from the Hidden Messages quest. Octavia strikes a chord. Okay, no, you deserve better than that. Octavia has her own approach to dealing significant damage with her first ability, Mallet. This unassuming little beatbox, which I muted the moment I found the option to, creates a shiny target for enemies to shoot at, and emits a ring of damage around it. The more enemies attack the mallet, the more damage the ring puts out. Combined with Octavia's innate invisibility option, she can hide from sight and let enemies go to town attacking the mallet instead, ramping up the damage they basically deal back to themselves. The stronger the enemy, the more damage they kick back. Usually enemy to enemy damage is pretty terrible on account of enemy health scaling well faster than their damage does. But in this case it somewhat works, as the damage is dealt to all enemies in the area. As more survive the initial damage ticks, they keep firing on the mallet and ramp the damage up yet higher. The range and damage can also be strongly enhanced with her fourth ability, Amp, which applies up to a base 200% damage multiplier and doubles the mallet's range. Octavia can be obtained from the Octavia's Anthem quest, and it's probably best to do that quest first before looking to get her components, for story spoiler reasons. Revenant has a tremendous damage dealing ability in his Dance Macabre ability. A multitude of shiny beams streak out from him as he spins around like a carousel, smashing enemies up to 100 meters away. The damage starts at 1250 per second per enemy, with it typed to corrosive, magnetic or gas damage for armoured, shielded or infested enemies. Holding down the fire button doubles the damage and the energy drain, and it gains additional damage based on the damage Revenant receives during this channel. The large area, good damage, type selection and innate ability to remain somewhat mobile means you can pour out considerable hurt with this ability. It is extremely energy hungry though, so do keep that in mind, especially as many energy sources do not work while channeling abilities like this. Revenant can be obtained from the Mask of the Revenant quest, and his parts from Plains of Eidolon bounties. Saryn is a beloved damage dealing frame. I'm not putting tiers to these frames due to their variety, but if I could really quantify it, I'd struggle to give Saryn anything other than S tier. Her first ability, Spores, starts with a small amount of corrosive damage on a targeted enemy, increasing as it deals damage. If the spore is damaged by weapons or abilities, or if the host is killed by nearly anything other than the spore itself, then the spore will burst and spread to all enemies within a base 16 meter range. Due to this disease-like spread, many enemies can be afflicted simultaneously and cause the damage to grow quickly. It's hard capped at 70,000 damage per spore per second, which is considered a lot. Saryn can add to this further with Miasma, dealing a base 150 viral damage per second to all unafflicted enemies, or 600 damage to those who are afflicted by her spores, and in all cases it adds a viral proc to increase the damage to health. This is a flat amount of damage, so it will fall off a bit at later levels, but by that point Spores is doing some serious work, and still benefits from the viral proc. It's not a frame you can completely zone out with, but it is powerful. Saryn can be acquired from the assassination mission Mero on Sedna, though the prime is usually easier to get. Titania I'm including for her Dex Pixia exalted weapon, usable during her fourth ability, Razor Wing. Many frames have a generally usable exalted weapon, but Dex Pixia has an incredible damage output that puts it above the others in my experience, Mesa's Peacemakers aside. Dex Pixia, a set of pistols, starts with a base 5.83 rounds per second fire rate and 160 damage per shot, mostly slash. That's just numbers so far, so let's put this into context. Before any form of modding is considered, that's 932.8 DPS, a little bit higher if you can include crits, and back down again if you include the reload time. For comparison, the Piranha, a secondary shotgun not a pistol, does 264 damage 4.17 times a second for, with crits, 1100 DPS, or 720 DPS after you add in reloading. The Axoletto Prime, the pistol with the lowest Riven disposition, meaning it is used more than most other secondaries, still comes out at a fraction of the sustained DPS. Now, given that the Dex Pixia can also benefit from ability strength to add to its damage, this little weapon can pack quite the punch. It's not the queen of damage, but Titania carries a very capable weapon from the outset, which can be useful if you've not got a lot of other damage dealing options. For example, if there's a sortie locking you out of certain weapons. A fully formed and riveted out meta primary will do more damage, but that's endgame talking. Most things you do in Warframe, even as a long-term player, are not endgame. Titania can be obtained from the Silver Grove quest, or the Prime version from Void Relics now. Volt is another strong contender for DPS consideration, specifically his third and fourth abilities. With his third ability, Electric Shield, Volt can allow him and his allies to fire through the shield to get a 50% electric damage buff and a critical damage bonus of 200%, both of them fixed. Extra shields in a line add more electric damage, though not more critical damage. This can lead to an incredible burst of power for all of them involved. Then you add on the fourth ability, Discharge. This ability allows Volt to cause enemies within its 20-meter range to erupt electricity damage to other enemies nearby, or damage themselves if no enemy is in range for 4.5 seconds. It's not the most powerful ability long term, with its lack of scaling, but the damage and range is high enough to cause sizable hurt in lower mid tiers, with a healthy helping of crowd control built into it. Add the Capacitance Augment for healing cherry on top, and you've got a very capable ability. Volt is easily obtained, either as a starter frame or from the Clan Dojo's Tenno Lab. Wisp is, firstly, making an appearance in a lot of my videos. Seriously, she's good at a large variety of things. This time I'm talking about her fourth ability, Soulgate. Wisp opens up a portal to the sun, and just immolates an entire corridor with the emitted plasma. Similarly to Revenant, Wisp's ability leaves her mobile, but with restrictions, though she can be faster than Revenant at base here, unless using the boosted damage version. The beam starts at 3000 DPS, and if you hold fire, it doubles like with Revenant to 6000 DPS. Unlike Revenant, the damage type is locked to heat and radiation, and also unlike Revenant, the damage doesn't stop there. If Wisp has an active Vitality or Shock mote on her from her reservoirs, she gains 25% damage per mote, so a 50% damage buff. We're up to 9000 DPS on boosted now. Wisp's damage also ramps up while focused on the same enemy, increasing by another 50% every half a second, or 100% every half a second while boosted, with up to 10 increases. This means the boosted damage then caps at 1000% extra damage, bringing us up from 9000 DPS to 99,000 DPS. And finally, with the Haste Most buff active, the beam also deals corrosive procs, though not corrosive damage, sundering enemy armour, making them yet more vulnerable to this damage. The base 40-meter length of Solar Flare will deal just shy of 100,000 damage per second to all enemies in range, with full enemy punch through, though not punching through obstacles. The shape and energy drain does limit the effectiveness of this damage output, but of all the ones I've listed today, this has to be my favourite one to use. Wisp can be obtained from the Roper Lolis mission on Jupiter, somewhat into the main questline. Lastly, we've got Wukong. His third ability, Defy, works similar to Octavia's mallet, except he becomes the mallet. Wukong goes invulnerable, drastically slows his movement speed, and soaks up all the damage enemies deal to him to instead unleash a powerful AoE within the base 12-meter range. Oh, and he gains a chunk of armour for a while after, based on the damage blocked. But this isn't the main ability I wanted to talk about. Wukong's here because of his first ability, Celestial Twin. Celestial Twin copies your loadout, right down to the mods, with an extra health boost on top. The Twin will use your melee if you use your primary or secondary, or will use your primary or secondary, whichever you are using when you switch to melee. In the absence of a melee, the Twin will only use your primary, and with only a melee equipped, the Twin will always use that. If you've got a good weapon setup, this Twin will not only be carrying an extra shed load of damage for you, it'll often be applying it to enemies more accurately than you, and to enemies you're not even actively engaging at the moment. This is a very strong damage spike for a very cheap ability. The better you are, the better your twin can be. Due to this, it's easy to top damage and top kill with Wukong among people with similar levels of progress to you. Wukong can be obtained very simply from the Clan Dojo Tenno Lab, though his Prime version is also quite easily available at the moment. Alrighty then folks, so whether you're looking to blast an area, sit back and grind out a long mission, or become a walking aimbot, or maybe just summon one to do the work for you, these are perhaps the best options in the game right now for DPS. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to check out the final 2 top contenders, check out Warframe, so Equinox and Ember. If you've already watched it, well, that's awesome. As always, stay safe, stay strong, and fight well, Tenno.
That's it. It will be a perfect specimen.
Oh, no,
Drop
it's
it
not
so
one
you
of
can synthesize it for me.
Can I swallow it?
Why? Spit out now. Mope.
Why is that